And we are back with another Monday preview, guys. We have Neil from Devil State of Mind talking all things New Jersey Devils. Once again, Neil, thanks so much for coming back on.
Thank you as always for having me on. It's always a pleasure to jump on, and I always love talking Devils hockey whenever I get the chance to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. First thing, because I know you guys haven't made a ton of big moves kind of in the off season, but I think there's definitely some newer faces on the Devils. Do you kind of want to run through kind of the bigger pieces or even newer pieces for the Devils and who to look out for?
Yeah, for sure. Well, unfortunately, one of them is on IR, and that's Evgeny Dodonov. Got injured in the first game and hasn't been back. We really don't know when he's coming back. Hopefully sooner rather than later, because we certainly miss him. Um, but look, you bring in a young kid like Arseny Grutsyuk, who has really taken the league by storm in the early going here. He's a older rookie, playing on a 1 year contract, a 1 year ELC with the Devils, and he's fit in very well. Whether he's playing on a top line or even on a third line with guys like Connor Brown and Cody Glass. I mean, it's really been a pleasure to watch him play. And he looks like a complete player. He looks like a guy that has been playing in this league for years and he's just comfortable. And I'm excited to see what he can continue to do here in this first year and really kind of, give the team more of that depth that they were lacking last year. Mentioned Connor Brown comes over after back-to-back years with getting to the Cup final with Edmonton. He's been great. He really has brought it's brought speed, it's brought some physicality, brought some big time goal scoring as well, which is very much needed. We've missed him the last couple of games, especially on the West Coast road trip. Um, Been really, really great to see as well. And other than that, I mean, it's just at the end of the day, it's just about this team staying healthy. And as we already have seen, this has been quite the challenge for this team. But then again, it's the same thing as every year. But I think from the new guys, for the most part, I've pretty much liked what I've seen, and hopefully they can continue to try to help this team continue to have the kind of strong season they've had so far.
Excellent. One other question. Speaking of the off season, I feel one of the bigger, hottest topics. I mean, really not even with the off season in particular, but is just the Hughes brothers and their contracts.
Yes.
Whether it's Quinn, whether it's Luke, Jack, whomever. But the Luke Hughes contract was definitely a hot topic going into the year. Were you nervous at any point? Did you have full confidence that it was going to get locked up? Were you surprised by like the contract itself? What were your feelings going into the Hughes contract?
Well, to answer the first part of your question, I was never nervous about the whole situation because first and foremost, people were constantly forgot this throughout the offseason is that even though Luke Hughes was an RFA, he hadn't played enough games to where he actually could have been offer sheeted. So nobody actually could have thrown in an offer that would have screwed up, the Devils
Right.
trying to get a long-term deal done. I know there was a lot of speculation throughout, whether or not Luke would try to line up his contract with Jax to both be free agents in a couple of years, which, by the way, would still be 5 years from now, which is a long time from now, which is something that I don't even think that would have been as worrisome.
Right.
Um, but at the end of the day, just getting him locked down long term, I think was the most important thing. The money is a little bit much, but really what you're seeing is you are seeing the Devils banking on Luke Hughes continuing to get better, right? And he's gotten off to a little bit of a slow start in the early goings here, particularly defensively. He's got to work on that. He's got to get better. But overall, I'm not really upset at all with this deal. I would have loved to have them to get that done sooner in the offseason so we weren't stressing about it. And also it went, into training camp and he missed the majority of the preseason. But other than that, I'm not upset about it. I can relax. I can breathe. You got both of the Hughes brothers locked in long term. Um, Fortunately for me, I'm not contractually obligated to not talk about Quinn if that was something that people wanted my opinion on. Um, I mean, the truth is basically this: Quinn Hughes is a free agent in 2 years. The Canucks have not gotten off to the best of starts.
No.
But again, it's not something the Devils should be worrying about in the slightest right now. That's a conversation for the trade deadline next offseason, the trade deadline after that. We got a lot of time between when that could become more of a possibility than right now. And the other thing I think to keep in mind that I think is important.
Did we lose him? Yeah, he's back.
All right, I'm back. I do not know where I left off, but I will say again, basically, we have a lot of time between when it becomes a potential possibility. And the other thing to keep in mind that Devils fans are continuing to forget is that the Devils have a lot of defensemen already pretty much locked up. I mean, you have Jonas Siegenthaler. Dougie Hamilton is the one guy that people keep referring to as the guy that could be on the way out to open up room, open up a roster spot, and obviously cap space to bring in Quinn Hughes. But you have other guys on the roster as well: Jonathan Kovacevic, Brett Pesce, Luke Hughes, Shimo Nemec, guys like that. There's a lot of moving parts, and there's other areas of this team that need to improve that do not really involve Quinn Hughes at this moment. But the more that we hear about it, the more that the Hughes brothers are kind of, in and out in terms of not really denying about the possibility of playing together and everything. It just leads to more speculation that we've heard this entire offseason.
All good fun chatter. Christy, you got any question?
Well, I'll give my usual question. Dawson Mercer. He looks like everything's back to normal. Again, he's one of my favorite players. So just your take on how his year is going so far and what you think on like a cup contending team, what does his role become?
Yeah, I mean, Dawson Mercer certainly needed to have a bounce back year after last year. He missed only one day of training camp the year before when he was in a contract. I don't even know if you call it holdout, just trying to get a new contract signed. I don't know how much that played into him having a struggle, but it was obviously first year under Sheldon Keefe. I think he really struggled to kind of get into a flow with everything. This year, he really came in with a mindset that he was going to get back to the level that we saw a couple of years ago. And he's playing on a line so well with Nico Hischier and Timo Meier. I keep saying that Sheldon Keefe, that's the one line that you do not touch, you do not do anything with. You just keep it going because they have been great. And Dawson Mercer has continued to get off to a fantastic start. I mean, he's one of the top goal scorers in the league right now, tied with a lot of other guys with 8 already on the year. He had 2 shorthanded goals in the win against Los Angeles last weekend. I mean, he has played very, very well, especially on that wing side. Everybody says, oh, well, he could play both the wing and the center position, which is true, but he's much better as a winger than he is a third line center. And that's the way that I look at it. And so it's great to see him step up. And in terms of him being a necessary piece to a Stanley Cup contending team, absolutely, because you need top 6 scoring. You need depth scoring. And Dawson Mercer brings that. And yeah, he can fill into a different role of being a center if need be. But ideally, you want to keep him going with where he's playing right now. And so overall, this is a guy that has definitely matured his game a lot more, feels a lot more comfortable in Sheldon Keefe's system, and he's building that chemistry early on very well with Timo Meier and Nico Hischier as well, and it's great to see. And I'm very happy that he's back to the level that he's capable of playing at that we've seen in years past.
Yeah, I'm glad for him. Just upset that he's not in a different uniform, but some things I can't let go of.
Right. Well, I want David Pastrnak on the Devils, and I can't have that. We all have our guys that we wish were on our team.
Yeah, definitely. Still wish we could have had Jake Ottinger. That's my guy. Like we talked about, the Devils are on a hot start for the beginning of the season. What do you think is kind of the biggest attribute to that? Is it just the top guys are healthy right now? Is it a mindset sort of shift? Is it, just another year under Sheldon Keefe, and so everything's been able to stack on top of each other? What do you think is kind of the biggest contributing factor to the Devils' hot start this season?
I think a couple of things. I think number one, I think a lot of the guys in the team have matured a lot more this year. I think you're seeing it in the early goings. They recognize a lot of the things that didn't go right last year, And now that they've had a full year under Sheldon Keefe and they understand what he's demanding of them, he's a very demanding coach. And I think, and this might be a knock on Lindy Ruff, but it was different with Lindy Ruff. He wasn't as a big yelling, screaming, demanding kind of coach. He was more of a guy that kind of let the players kind of control everything. And that doesn't always work, especially with a lot of young guys. You get a coach like Sheldon Keefe, who's had a lot of experience, getting to the playoffs and playing in such a tough market in Toronto. And it's definitely a culture shock, I think, for a lot of guys. And I think it's still somewhat of something that guys are getting used to, but I think it's a lot easier this year than it was last year. And I think what's also important is that this team is getting some adversity right now with injuries. They've also lost 3 of the last 4, had a really rough West Coast road trip. But despite all of that, you're 9-4-0. You're still first place in the Metro and you're top 5 in the NHL. The world is not coming to an end here. And yeah, Devils got to get healthy. You got to get Brett Pesce back. You got to get Evgeny Dadonov back. You got to get Jonathan Kovacevic back. And you got to get Cody Glass back. That team was winning games and having a winning streak when you had a bunch of those guys out, which proves that this team does have a lot of depth. And that's really important to see. And yeah, one of the things that can be frustrating is that they will fall back into some bad habits that Sheldon Keefe is still trying to get out of this team. Fortunately, we have a long season to go. And for the Devils, it's about finding their game consistently. And I think what's been really important for them is that they have not panicked in a lot of games. Yeah, they've let some things go, especially in the last week, but they don't panic. They give up a goal and it's like, all right, let's figure out what we got to do here and push forward. And their schedule is not easy to begin the year. I mean, you look at some of the teams they played in the early goings, Florida, Edmonton, Colorado. They were playing some of the top teams in the league, and they beat those teams. Great to all of them at home, but nonetheless, you beat those teams, and that's important. You went to Toronto, and you beat up on the Leafs. I mean, you really had, that was one of those statement games. Jack Hughes had a hat trick in that game. I mean, those are the kind of things, and you're getting good goaltending from Jake Allen and Jacob Markstrom, who's now finally back from injury and coming off a really strong 40-plus save performance against the Kings over the weekend. I think those are kind of the things that really kind of stand out. And obviously the power play being what it is, the defense, when Brett Pesce is in the lineup, is certainly a lot better. And those are some things that need to be fixed. But overall, those are the things that I would attribute to the Devils' good start so far this year.
Awesome. And speaking of Markstrom and Allen, I feel like, as an outsider, I see very polarizing viewpoints when it comes to the opinions of the goalie tandem in Jersey. And Granted, you've had Markstrom and Allen for at least like a year or two.
A year.
In terms of in a year. But what are your thoughts kind of with this tandem right now?
It's a really solid tandem. I think it's one of the more solid ones in the NHL, especially when these guys are playing at the level that they're capable of. Jake Allen has been a great addition since he got traded over here 2 seasons ago. And you see the kind of confidence that the Devils and Allen has in New Jersey by the kind of contract that they signed together. And everybody panics and says, 5-year contract for a goaltender that's in his mid-30s. Well, the reality is that he's barely getting any money. He's not really hurting the cap. And the Devils could easily get out of that contract in another year or two if and when Allen's skills start to decline. So that's not something I'm really worrying about. But Jake Allen is one of the best backup goaltenders in the league. I mean, the guy came in when Markstrom got hurt early in the season. He rattled off 5 wins in a row and was a big reason that the Devils were able to get that 8-game winning streak to begin the year. He's a guy that the Devils feel very comfortable with back there, a really, really good veteran presence. Jacob Markstrom, as we've seen many times before, when he's on, he is really on, and he can make some really fantastic saves. And when he's off, you get some games like you got in Colorado, maybe even earlier in the year, but nonetheless, the Devils understood that this is the guys they want to go to battle with, that they want to make that long run to winning a Stanley Cup. And they have a lot of confidence in both of those guys, and that's important. And even a 2-year contract extension for Markstrom is not that big of a deal either. The money is whatever, but the salary cap is going up. So what is $6 million per year nowadays? It's probably going to be more like a $3 million per year, because again, with the cap being much higher, those kind of contracts don't look as bad. And the other thing I think that is important for people to understand is that if the Devils didn't lock down both of these guys, what options did they have on the market? The answer is none, because when you have a good goaltender, it's like having a top flight running back in the NFL. You want to find every way, shape, or form to keep that guy around as long as possible. And, have that, because they don't come around that often. They come a dime a dozen, really. And the Devils have a lot of good talent, young talent between the pipes in their farm system. And they want to give them more time to develop in the minors and also in college and wherever they're playing junior hockey as well. And these kind of moves do that. And I think there's still a lot of confidence in both of those guys. With the way they played, at least recently, you kind of worry about that. But I think there's also a defensive breakdown that's going on as well in front of them that doesn't put the entire blame on both of them. But overall, I'm very confident in the goaltending tandem this team has.
Sounds good. Yeah, that's definitely been the kind of continuous voice with other folks that we've talked to from other teams that maybe don't have the best goaltending tandem or maybe a little inconsistent. It's like, okay, right, but who else is out there? Like,
exactly.
Getting a top getting a top goaltender, like, they don't grow on trees.
And they barely get traded either. I mean, goalies don't get traded. I mean, John Gibson getting dealt to Detroit was like, one in many times, one in very few times that actually happens. So, people say, the Rangers are going to probably do a rebuild. Shesterkin's probably going to get traded. It's very unlikely that that's going to be the case. Like, he's not going anywhere anytime soon. That's just not going to happen. So, like, at the end of the day, the Devils, this is who they got. This is who they got in their foxhole, and they feel very confident in those guys. And there's no reason that I shouldn't feel confident as well.
Love that. Christy, you got any questions?
I can go just a tiny bit into, I'm going to butcher his name, is Nemec?
Shimon Nemec.
Nemec. Because, that was a high pick that they've been really taking their time with. What's his role for this year, and what do you think so far?
The great question about that is that we really don't know what his role is on this team, unfortunately. Nemec has kind of been an up and down kind of player. He's still very young. I think that's something that is lost on a lot of guys because, he's coming off playing in his 100th career game at this point. And he's never played like a full season with this team. He's gone up and down from the minors. One of the things that was frustrating last year was that he got hurt prior to the beginning of last season when he was playing for Slovakia, trying to help them qualify for the Olympics. And he never really got going, and it became an issue where he ended up having to play the majority of the year down in Utica. But he came back, played really well in the playoffs, got that overtime goal, his big moment in New Jersey. And, this year he's had some good moments, but he's also had some really bad moments. I think this whole road trip, he has really struggled. I mean, he's made a lot of bad passes, really been in a difficult spot. And it's really hard to kind of put him with somebody where you feel very confident that he can play well with defensively. He certainly has to find a way to get into a better rhythm here, or he's going to probably end up getting moved. I think that's a guy that people are going to be looking towards, especially when we get closer to the trade deadline and people say, okay, New Jersey, probably looking for a top 6 scorer. I think Shimon Nemec is going to be one of the first guys that gets probably put in a deal for whoever that might be. I want to see him succeed because it's important to continue to have, young defensemen that can step into this lineup and play. But he's got a lot of work to do. And that's really the best way that I can put it.
Okay. That's all I got, Hockey Princess. Those
Okay.
my two guys.
Simply
That's all I can add to the show. Sorry.
Fair enough. All right. This doesn't have to be a young kid. We can spin this to however you'd like.
Sure.
But who do you think is going to be the biggest surprise for the New Jersey Devils this year?
I think again it's Arseny Griciuk because this is a guy that was drafted in the 5th round back in 2019, and he's had a handful of years playing professional hockey over in the KHL in Russia. Won a championship, has played with some of the top teams, has been a bona fide goal scorer. And there was a lot of hype about him coming into this year because we were hoping that he could be that like true legit, Russian scoring winger that, any team would like. I mean, anybody wants another Kirill Kaprizov, right? Like who wouldn't? I'm not saying that that's what Gritsuk is going to be, but he has pleasantly surprised us. Like he's been probably more than advertised, I think, with just how confident he looks out there, how well he can make passes, how well he could just put the puck on net and continue to score. And I think that the national media is slowly starting to notice him more. I know everybody's infatuated with guys like Demidov in Montreal, and some other rookies out there, but I think Gritsuk is going to continue to get better. I think he's going to continue to find more ways to get the puck in the back of the net. And I think it's just going to gain that much more attention for him throughout the national media. And so it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up being like that huge breakout, surprising player that we have right now, because even though the expectations were kind of high for him, he's really, really exceeding them in many ways.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I know it's early days, but we're just bear with us. What is kind of your prediction, at least for like the first half of the season for the New Jersey Devils? We won't go full season because crazy stuff always happens in like January and February.
My prediction, especially with where the team has started the year and everything, I expect this team to be in the top 5, top 10 in the NHL by the time we get to the halfway point of the season. Because they have the capability to score it well. When they're healthy on the back end, their defense is very, very good, and they have really strong goaltending. Again, they're missing 2 pieces, in my opinion. They're missing a good third-line center and a top 6 winger. I think if they can find a way to get those, whether it's before or during the deadline, I think that gives this team all the ammo it needs to make a deep run in the playoffs. But in terms of where I want to see them at least the halfway point of this year, I want to see them in the top 5, top 10, because that's how good I think this team can be, and that's where they should be.
Oh, with third line center, you should have made Donato an offer during.
Well, he wanted too much money, and we weren't going to do it.
You
guys were asking for too much.
Fair.
And we got Cody Glass, which a lot of us seem to enjoy. So, but he's more of a fourth line center that plays on the third line because Luke Glendening plays the fourth line center for now. So there you go.
It all works out. All right. And then final, this can be a mentality thing, if we can just beat this one team, a line piece. What do you think is the biggest hurdle for the New Jersey Devils right now?
Well, it's tough to give you one because there's 2 that stand out in my head. And one of them is injuries. I think is always going to be a major hurdle for this team, getting healthy and staying consistently healthy, because everybody looks to 22-23. That team was pretty much fully healthy for most of the year, and look what they were able to do. Yeah. And there's nothing saying that they can't do that now. They just have to find a way to get healthy and stay healthy. And I think, again, the biggest hurdle in terms of team is the Carolina Hurricanes. I mean, the Devils have really struggled against Carolina. It's just a team that the way that they play, who's on that team, it gets in this team's head. And we've seen it in the playoffs. We saw it in the first game of the regular season this year. You don't want to say the team is trying to build itself to be prepared to beat just one team. But you know that in order for this team to make a deep run and ultimately compete for a Stanley Cup, you're going to have to play Carolina. And you're going to ultimately have to find a way to beat them. In Carolina, more specifically, because the Devils can beat the Hurricanes at home. They've done that many times. But it's about going to Raleigh in that tough environment with that team, not getting the last change on lines, and finding a way to win. And it's hard, but there are teams that have proven that they can do it. I mean, the Rangers have done it for years. Florida did it again this past year in the playoffs. This team is not like unbeatable in any way, shape, or form. It's about having a mindset that you can beat them, and it's about going out there and doing what is necessary to win those games. And the Devils have a couple more cracks at them in the regular season. It wouldn't surprise me if the Devils have to play them at some point in the playoffs, because that's a team that is going to be a major hurdle for this New Jersey Devils team if they want to do anything in the playoffs.
No, definitely. And I definitely agree that you don't want to like build your team to beat one other team, but I think every team has that one. Granted, we are in a very different state of rebuilding than you guys, but with our team being so small with guys like Bedard and NASCAR that are
welcome to the party of having small players.
That I always say at the end of the day, you have to play Vegas. Even in the regular season,
right.
You got to play like a bigger team that's going to like kick the crap out of you.
Yeah, and I mean, you guys also have to face Colorado numerous times throughout the year, which is never an easy task at any point. And the Devils just had back-to-back games against them, and I mean, they're just so fast, and it's hard to keep up. But I've really liked what I've seen from Chicago so far. I think they've been kind of a little bit of a surprise to a lot of people, and it's been fun. And I really hope that the Hawks can continue to build around Bedard and lock him down long term, and make him that cornerstone piece that I know Hawks fans have been waiting for. And look, exactly 4 years ago today, I did a solo trip to Chicago, and I was there when Patrick Kane was still there, but the Hawks were clearly more in a rebuild. But I went to 2 games there. They played Nashville and they played Pittsburgh. They won both games, and it was a sold out crowd. And this is a team that was towards the bottom of the NHL, but sold out crowd. And I know how passionate that Chicago fan base is. I have family that live in Southside. I know, I know from even a family perspective how much the Hawks being good means to that city, means to that entire area. And so I think it's only a matter of time before that team really, turns that big corner that I know a lot of you guys have been waiting for. And you have solid goaltending for the most part. You just got to find a way to get some more offense. Defense could be a little bit better. But overall, I think you got to like what you see in terms of the direction that Chicago is getting to right now.
It's definitely not getting worse.
Look, you know what? If you're not getting worse, then it's that's a positive in its own right.
Definitely a positive.
There you go.
No, that is definitely a positive. Well, Neil, thank you so much for coming on. Do you want to take a second to plug your show to our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So, as always, first of all, thank you guys so much for having me on again. It's an absolute pleasure. Really love being on here with you guys. And I'm enjoying the fantasy league as well that I'm in. So thank you for that. But yeah, you can check out the podcast over on YouTube, Devil's State of Mind. Very close to 175 subscribers. So make sure to go like and subscribe over there if you haven't already. You can check out the video version of the podcast. And you can also just find it wherever you listen to the podcast, Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever you can listen, and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify, because it really helps continue to grow the podcast. You can follow me on social media, Devil State of Mind on Facebook and Instagram, Devil State over on Twitter, and also you can check out podcast content over on my TikTok, which is just my name, Neil.Villapiano, and also follow my Blue Sky as well for Devils content. So that's where you can check out everything there is to know about the Devil State of Mind podcast and the New Jersey Devils.
Perfect. Excellent. Thank you again. And it should be a very fun matchup.
Looking forward to it as always. Thank you guys for having me on.
We've got one more game this week, and that is facing the Toronto Maple Leafs. At the time of recording, Toronto sits 5th out of 8th in their division. Their last 10 are 5-4-1. For injured reserve, you've got Lawton out on day-to-day, Riffai out on long-term injured reserve, Tanov's out. It was a pretty gnarly hit that he took, I want to say like a week and a half ago. And then you have Joseph Woll out for the time being. With Woll being out, you've got Stolarz and Hildeby as your goaltending tandem. I would imagine Stolarz is in net unless they have a back-to-back, just because Stolarz is their starter. And, guys, now that we're winning, we might get some starters with the opposing teams' goaltending tandems. That is an exciting improvement. Other notable players for the Toronto Maple Leafs on the forward end, you have Matthews, you have Nylander, you have Nyes, you have Tavares. For those that didn't pay attention to hockey during the offseason, biggest departure for the Toronto Maple Leafs this offseason was with Mitch Marner, who is now with the Vegas Golden Knights. But all the other big names are pretty much still there on the forward aspect. However, Easton Cowens, one of the younger kids coming up in the Toronto Maple Leafs farm system, he was up with Toronto for at least this, first month, has been sent down to the Marlies. That was kind of a surprise to some, but I'd imagine, he doesn't get brought up for any reason by Saturday, barring there's an injury. Defensemen, you have Riley, you have McCabe, you have Ekman-Larsson, you have Carlo. Toronto Maple Leafs are definitely one of those teams where they kind of hit relatively cruise control until you need to make sure that you're in playoff contention. But that being said, I think being fifth right now is definitely a surprise to some, but that division in itself is kind of wacky. Toronto also, in my opinion, is one of those where it could go one of two ways with this matchup. They do lack defensive skill, at least right now, with Tanev out as well. But they're not the most defensively sound team. So with how aggressive Chicago has been for this first month, there's definitely opportunity to capitalize on their defensive lacking. But on the flip side, Auston Matthews is still Auston Matthews. William Nylander is still William Nylander. So on the flip side, we have a very younger D-core, and it could just swing the other way where, Matthews against Artie may not go our way every time. So Toronto could be firing on all cylinders, or it could be Toronto, thinking that they can come in here and it'll be an easy game, and maybe they're on cruise control for at least the first period, and we're able to capitalize and get a lead. Biggest thing, and one thing that I said last week that I think definitely helped with a couple of wins that we were able to pick up on the road games, discipline is going to be a huge thing, especially against Toronto as well, because like I said, they're very forward heavy with their talent with Matthews, Nylander, Tavares, all those guys. You certainly don't want to be on the penalty kill with those guys for too long. Granted, our penalty kill is pretty good, I would say. Definitely a stronger point for the team, but you don't want to be on the PK against those guys for too long. So I would definitely say, one of the biggest things is to just be as disciplined as you can. Should be an interesting matchup. Like I said, it's this Saturday. We've got New Jersey on Wednesday, and then we've got Toronto on Saturday. Both are home. The boys are finally back home. Thank goodness. This road week has been rough for all of us. I imagine those 9 p.m. starts were a doozy. That is all, and we will talk at you guys next week.